Well, my name's Matt, and I am a sociologist, so I'm probably not going to be very funny for those of you that... Oh, can you guys hear me okay? Okay, cool. So the title of my talk is Code Switching Digital Natives and Digital Immigrants at School, and it's based on research that I've done in 3 middle schools that vary by race and class, and I'll be talking about these 3 terms, but the first 2 I'm going to start with are digital native and digital immigrant. So we typically know digital native to refer to this idea that young people are somehow naturally gifted at technology and that older generations are just simply always falling behind. They're just not as skilled as these digital natives. But we know that it's a bit more complicated than that. We know that educators see that not all kids are actually equally skilled when it comes to technology. And tech researchers see too that older generations are adopting certain tech platforms at rates faster than ever before. And I'm sure anthropologists in the room cringe when they hear these terms native and immigrant thrown around because researchers have used these terms to create boundaries between the people they study, and it creates complicated power dynamics. But in my dissertation, which looks at these 3 schools that I mentioned, I find that actually these terms are alive and well in schools. Teachers use them regularly to make sense of the relationships that they have with their students. And one teacher put it really well to me, I thought. And it represented kind of teachers at 2 of my schools. And she goes, Matt, you know, these kids can text, but they can't type in MLA format. And I realized that teachers at 2 of these schools, they see kids texting and Facebook messaging, all as kind of frivolous activities that are not really learning relevant. And more than that, they use this as a way to see themselves as legitimate actors, even in the face of perhaps their own lack of fear about their own technological expertise. But this wasn't the only perspective that I saw in schools. I have another school which serves primarily minority youth, and sociologists like myself would paint a pretty grim outlook for this school. We would not really expect that there would be a lot of learning activity happening there based on the literature. But when I got there, I saw that the school was serving tons of technology. They were using Google Docs for learning, MIT's Scratch interface for computer programming and design, all sorts of stuff. And so despite all of this academic literature in sociology, I saw that sociology actually kind of failed me. It didn't well predict what I was seeing in this school. And so why do we find this to be different? And the clue that I got, and this is a first hot tip to school ethnographers, is to go to faculty lounges, because you'll always get the real scoop there with all the gossip that happens there. And I was in between appointments with teachers, and this teacher came up to me, and she goes, Matt, you know what it is? These kids, they're so skilled at Facebook and texting and whatever, but it's our job as educators to teach these kids how to code switch, how to translate their skills to school. And I was just having this moment where I was like, what? Code switching? I know that from the literature that typically refer to this idea that minority youth like have a language they speak with their peers and family, but then when they have to learn a whole different language when they go to school and learn that language. And I realized actually that code switching is a metaphor for a teaching strategy. It acknowledges that kids have their own valuable skills that they develop from hanging out online with peers, but also that schools are their own places with sets of rules. And code switching in this way positions teachers as translators between peer cultures and the technologies that they use and the educational institution. So hot tip number 2. You can read all of the literature, academic literature in the world, and still be surprised by what you find when you go in the field. The real story is often obtained when you talk to the very people that you're studying. And one of the lessons that I learned from this is actually that schools are often really scary places. And schools have their own rules, their own etiquette, their own language. And research is right in that traditionally underserved youth just aren't as well positioned to meet these expectations as are youth from better circumstances. And so we may hate terms like digital native and digital immigrant, but they're actually really helpful when you talk to teachers and realize that it represents the foreignness between youth spheres of peer culture and technology use and school. But this code switching frame actually positions teachers not as top-down authorities, but rather as bridges between young people and the technologies they use and the schools they enter. And in this way, teachers have shown me how we can envision student skills with technology not as risks for learning, but rather as opportunities. Thank you.